We are honored to be joined by George Helmy, who, as we do this program, is a United States Senator. On the 4th of December, for a few more days, he will be a senator. Good to see you, George.
Steve, so great to be with you. And frankly, it's my honor to be on the program again with you. And thank you again for what you and your team do.
Appreciate that. George, let me ask you this. As we were joking before, there's so many things about you in the news as we're doing this program. You are leaving the Senate after the Governor Murphy appointed you. Big picture question. Number one lesson you've learned about leadership / how the Senate works or doesn't work?
You know, Steve, it goes back to conversations. The lesson I've learned is the lesson you and I have discussed many times privately and publicly, is we are all in the relationship business. And you can get into your own, you can get into your own camp and scream into the cave and rile up those who are already on your side. Or you go out of your way, leave your office, go down the hall, shake somebody's hand, ask them for a cup of coffee or a drink, and get to know them. And find the areas where you're going to have agreement. You know, everybody comes to this building, I believe, with the intention to create change for the people in their state or their district. And if you can meet them on their field, you're likely to find some common ground. You'll still disagree with them on 98% of things, but I didn't think I'd have relationships with some of the Republican senators just based on who I thought they were, based on who I saw on CNN or Fox News or MSNBC. And you get here and you say, hey, why are you here? And, I've been able to advance real conversations that I think long after I take off this pin in a few days, I'll be able to really help New Jersey with the relationships we've built. And so the lesson in leadership is meet people where they are, get out of your bubble, and go build relationships.
You know, it's so interesting you say this, Senator, because, and again, this will be seen for several months into 2025, and the lessons in this conversation will be just as relevant. But I'm curious about this. A couple of your priorities in the 90 days you will have been in the Senate: youth mental health, and also we'll talk about humanitarian aid to Gaza, Lebanon, and the West Bank. First, youth mental health. I'm curious. And even when you leave the Senate and go back into the private sector, this will still be a priority for you. Why youth mental health? You have two young children, teens, if you will. We have one who's at that age and then some who are older. But this youth mental health thing, an epidemic, George?
An epidemic, a significant crisis that I felt was being undertold. The story was being undertold in these incredible halls. And, being chief of staff to Governor Murphy during the COVID pandemic, we already saw what kids were facing before the pandemic. You and I, Steve, were talking about our children on the lead into the story and our children, what they're experiencing. And, when we were kids, it wasn't that the world was great, but we didn't wake up to political turmoil, climate change, mass casualty events in schools. The kids are being bombarded with negativity all day. Then they get on their social media, and big tech's creating algorithms that targets them. They create massive revenue streams off of them. So kids are constantly in comparison mode. Where are my friends versus where am I? Whose life am I watching on a stream versus what my life looks like? So it's the thief of joy. And I really do believe, I believe it, the data is telling us our kids are not okay. And, as you know me well, I am data oriented. I wanted to come here in 90 days and find an issue where I thought that there was bipartisan ability to move the conversation, actually drive legislation. And in those meetings that I mentioned earlier, say, hey, look at this data on how many of our kids are creating suicide. Look at the data just in 10 years about the doubling of kids being seen in emergency rooms because of self-harm. We have a problem, and it's our obligation as policymakers, whether it be at a local, state, or federal level, to do something about it. And I've just been so encouraged by the bipartisan support and, frankly, the uplifting that many of the members here have given me on that issue.
To the Senator's point, please go on our website, steveadubato.org. We've done numerous interviews with experts in the field of youth mental health. Put in the youth mental health name and under topic, and you'll see those interviews. Check them out. Senator, let me ask you this. You talk about bipartisanship, making friends or building relationships with people both sides of the aisle. But as we do this program, leading up to a new president, new Congress taking over, again, be seen in January, February, March, are we as polarized as it feels?
I believe that the country may be that polarized, and I think there's a number of reasons for it. I will tell you, in the United States Senate, while you do have those folks at the polar edges, and that's just who they are and what they believe, I still believe the majority of this body is able to meet somewhere in the middle and to make progress. And I think that's the importance of rules like the filibuster, the role of getting to know people down here. And so, yeah, I have to agree, Steve, with that comment that I do think there's real polarization. And I think it's driven by a number of factors, including sort of a 24-hour news media that really doesn't, unlike you and some of your colleagues, really get to the heart of issues and discuss policy and substance. It has really become sort of an entertainment system, in my opinion. But I still believe, having now come back from my third tour, as you know, I did 2 tours as a staffer here, but doing this 90 days and getting to really, sit with all these members, the body still is capable of doing big things on behalf of the American people. And I leave here actually more optimistic than where I came in.
Really? More optimistic?
I do. And I have significant, you're not going to find me here as a defender of what the president-elect's policies are or many of his cabinet nominations so far. But I've gotten to know Leader Thune. I've gotten to know people around him. And I clearly know Leader Schumer and our leadership team, which now includes New Jersey Senator Cory Booker elevating to the 4th position in Democratic leadership, which is just tremendous for our state and for the party. And I do leave optimistic that the people here care about this institution. They care about the obligations of duly elected senators. They're not going to be rolled over. And they're going to try to find consensus on many of these issues that are troubling our nation, including, obviously, the future and well-being of our children.
Obviously, there are issues like youth mental health affecting our nation, and there are issues that impact the world. Your commitment, Senator, to more humanitarian aid to Gaza, Lebanon, the West Bank, you come at this from a unique perspective. People will say, which side are you on? That's not how you see it. I know enough about you to know that it's not picking sides. When you talk about more humanitarian aid to the people, not places, but people there, why is that so personal for you?
I appreciate the way you asked that question, and it speaks also to the polarization question. I refuse and have always refused in my public policy service to get boxed in to be told you're on this side of the issues that we face are more complicated than that, and the American people are smart enough and deserve, frankly, for us to speak to the complexity of complex issues. And so, being on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, much of the conversation that was happening about the issue in the Middle East was defense, armaments, and really the armed conflict. And I said, okay, I'm going to immerse myself in that. I have foreign policy experience. Clearly, I worked under Senator Booker, who's a member of that committee. But I said, where is the commentary on the 50,000 lives lost in Gaza and the devastation that is currently happening in the West Bank? And then when the crisis escalated into Israel's efforts against Hezbollah, what's happening with Lebanon, which already had an influx of Syrian refugees who had left the crisis there. And so, look, leadership requires courage and requires you to be bold and requires you to know that when you speak up on these issues, you're going to get hit from both sides, because one side's going to tell you you're not doing enough here, and the other side's going to tell you, how dare you. But we spoke up with boldness, and I can't tell you how much praise we got from, frankly, all sectors of the Democratic Party and Republicans who thanked me after my floor speech on Gaza and said, thank you for saying that, and we hope more members will come to the floor and speak the devastation. We're seeing the decimation of a human population because we can't get supplies that I personally saw on a trip to Jordan. And I'm meeting, just so you know, with the King of Jordan actually very soon, just so the New Jersey people know that we are truly running through the tape here
Right.
in the honor they've given me in serving. We saw in Jordan warehouses full of supplies. These is food, medication, winterized tents as winter was approaching, that couldn't get over because the checkpoints were really choke points and they weren't safe. And from the checkpoint to the distribution center, we couldn't get the supplies. And so, being a United States Senator, one thing you have is you are one of 100 in the United States. And when you raise your voice, people take notice. And so thankful that the team and we stepped up and said, hey, we're going to take it. We're going to take a position. We're going to make a statement. We're going to bring some attention to it. I was able to advance that conversation with Secretary Blinken. I'm talking to the Israeli embassy literally right after I hang up with you, Steve. And so we're going to continue to make progress. And I can assure the people of New Jersey, my public service doesn't stop the day I give up a pin. I'm going to continue advocating for these really important issues.
Senator, the pin you referred to being in the Senate pin, the Club of 100, this very special elite. I know you don't like that. I know you don't like the senators only. I know, I've read that about you. But I was a member of the state legislature of 120 for literally one term, and then bye, Steve, you're out. That's called losing an election. But I have to ask you this I don't have to, I choose to ask you this on a personal level. I'm sure it was not part of your plan, your career plan, to be in the US Senate. How much of the appointment to the Senate, the serving in the Senate, is personal for you because of so many reasons, but also because of your heritage?
Without question. I mean, it's personal to me for all the reasons I think you just alluded to. One is when the governor came to me, and you're right, it wasn't my plan. I had left government service. I was enjoying more time home with the kids, attending the games. But, a number of things came to mind. One is I knew I would be the only Arab American serving in the United States Senate during this Congress at a time in which there was a significant conflict in the Middle East, in which the humanitarian piece of it wasn't getting enough attention. Second is to be the first Coptic Orthodox in New Jersey, New York, Pennsylvania have a huge Coptic Orthodox population, but to be the first to ascend from my heritage and my faith to serve in the Senate was just an incredible honor. But I would tell you more importantly is just my experience in New Jersey, working alongside you and many other leaders for so long, just knew the issues. So coming in at a time where there are important bills being considered, appropriations are taking all their steps, being able to advance the issues that I know Senator Kim will be able to carry on and to back up Corey on things that are important to us in terms of grant funding and our military bases, that was critical that we had somebody who it wasn't a learning curve for me. I knew these issues. I knew them from the Senate perspective, and clearly as the longest serving chief of staff in the state's history, I knew these issues in and out. So for those reasons, it was just really important for me to say, yes, one of my favorite passages from the Bible is in Isaiah, and where the Lord is seeking somebody, and Isaiah says, "Here I am, send me." And I've sort of looked at life that way. When called upon, be ready to go.
Well said, Senator. And on a professional and personal level, thank you for your service in the Senate. Thank you for your service in government and public service for a long time. And most importantly, wish you and your family all the best in the new year. Thank you, Senator.
Steve, thank you. And honestly, thank you for what you do. It's so important, well beyond the borders of New Jersey. I applaud you and I applaud your team and appreciate our friendship.
And you know better than most, it's really the team. Thank you, Senator. That is Senator George Helmy. As we do this program, make sure you watch it over the next several months. This conversation will be just as relevant as when we're taping it. I'm Steve Adubato. That's George Helmy. See you next time.
Think Tank with Steve Adubato is a production of the Caucus Educational Corporation, celebrating 30 years in public broadcasting. Funding has been provided by the Turrell Fund, a foundation serving children. Operating engineers, Local 825. Eastern Atlantic States Regional Council of Carpenters. New Brunswick Development Corporation. IBEW Local 102. Horizon Blue Cross Blue Shield of New Jersey. Kane University. NJM Insurance Group. Community Food Bank of New Jersey. And by these public-spirited organizations, individuals, and associations committed to informing New Jersey citizens about the important issues facing the Garden State. Promotional support provided by NJ.com and by New Jersey Globe.
Here at Kane University, everyone gets their chance to climb higher. Michael came to Kane and found his passion for healthcare, and now he's a doctor. After Trisha graduated, her graphic design work was featured in the New York Times. Samantha is studying athletic training and finding her path through an internship with the New York Giants. Real students, real stories, real success. Cougars climb higher. Kane University.